Hi everyone, thanks so much for watching. In today's video, I'm going to do a get ready with me and talk about the struggles I have been having with perimenopause. So I did a video probably about a week and a half ago where I talked about some new things that were going on in my life, and I mentioned in that video that the last four or 5 months actually have been a struggle for me with perimenopause stuff. And I said if anyone was interested, I would do a whole story time. I would get into it. And a few of you did mention that you were interested. And I do know I've had a couple girlfriends also mention that they would be interested. So I'm going to get into that today. So just, a bit of a warning going in. I'm going to be talking about some, menstrual bleeding. I'm going to be talking about some stuff that maybe not everybody wants to hear about. So if that's the case, I totally understand. This is, going to be all about perimenopause and my experience. So I have a few new makeup products, so I thought we would kind of combine it. So I'm going to go in with some primer first. It's the Touch and Soul Glassy Skin. You can see how much of that I've used. So honestly, it just feels like a moisturizer. I really like this primer. Hair out of here. So just some background. I'm 47. I will be 48 in October. And I knew I was going to go through perimenopause stuff pretty early. Look how glowy that makes my skin. So, I got my period early. The women in my family have gone through menopause early. So I wasn't surprised when probably, I don't remember exactly, but I want to say 3 or 4 years ago, maybe not quite that long. Let's say 3 years ago, I started getting hot flashes, which if you have never had a hot flash, that is brutal. It's brutal. It feels like you're on fire inside and then it just sort of radiates out. So yeah, I started with the hot flashes. That was kind of my first thing that started happening, and I went on sage pills. I think the brand I went on is called Menoforce. Let's go in now with some Tarte primer. This is the Timeless Smoothing Primer. This is the mini, and I just recently picked this up in the Sephora sale because I was missing it. If I forget to mention any of these products, I will list them all below. So they'll all be down there if you're curious. But yeah, so I went to the health food store, and I'll just say this too. Prior to going through any perimenopause stuff, I had really thought I would go through menopause just completely natural. I had no intentions of doing any sort of hormone replacement stuff or really anything, right? I just thought, no, it's this natural process. I'm going to embrace it. Okay. So let's go in. This is new to me. It's the ABH Luminous Foundation, and I just got this in my BoxyCharm box. I have shade 140N. I haven't used this before. This is my first time using it. So anyways, I started with some hot flashes. Not a big deal. I went to the health food store. They said, well, try sage. So I did. It's just 100% sage pills is all that Menoforce is. There's nothing else in it. And so I went on that, and they really help. They really help me because the hot flashes were keeping me up at night, which is horrible, right? Like that, not sleeping. I don't do well without sleeping. I need my sleep, and I need quite a bit of sleep. Like I need at least 8 hours of sleep. I just can't function. So I went on the sage pills. They really, really helped. They didn't completely get rid of the hot flashes, but they definitely made it more manageable. So I will say that, go maybe talk to your health food store and see what they say. If you're struggling with hot flashes, the sage really worked for me. And I've recommended the sage to, quite a few girlfriends and people that I know. And I know for a lot of them, it's helped as well. Wow, that foundation looks beautiful. Again, this is my first time using it. And then about that same time, now I have never struggled with PMS. Just not something that I ever really struggled with. Would I get a little teary once in a while? Sure. Would I get ragey? No. And I definitely got a little murdery in my early perimenopause, to the point where I feel like my husband was afraid for his life some days. Like I, again, never struggled with that before. So that was new. And I definitely was like I had no patience at work. I had no patience here at home. I felt ragey. I don't know how to describe it other than just ragey. And it lasted for quite a while, actually, like a few years. I don't feel like that's still present. I'd have to maybe ask my husband, maybe it is, but I feel like my moods are more even now than they were at the start. At the start, I was like, oh, somebody is just, again, gonna get murdered. I was so murdery. And so those were kind of my first two things. I noticed my moods were off and just the night sweats. Well, I would have hot flashes all day long, but I started also with the night sweats, which were keeping me up at night. So I would just be up all night. Okay, let's go in with the LYS Triple Fix Full Coverage Brightening Concealer. Again, I picked this up in the Sephora sale. So that was pretty much, that went on for years, and I didn't really have much for changes. You know, pretty much my periods stayed the same. I would occasionally miss a period and then maybe get an extra one every once in a while. They were off a little bit, but pretty consistent. And, you know, I've been pretty consistent my whole life, actually. And my periods have always been sort of, you know, the first day is, I would say, moderately heavy, not really very heavy. And then, you know, it maybe lasts 3 days in total. So I've been very lucky with my periods through my life, right? Like nothing horrendous. I have girlfriends who just, it's horrible. It's horrible. But mine haven't been like that. Like I would put a tampon in at night and be good until the morning. Like no pad, no underwear, no nothing, right? It was fine. And that's kind of how I have always been. And so, yeah, I did see a little bit of irregularity, but nothing that I thought was very major. And then in April of 2021, I went for the first dose of my vaccine. So I hope talking about the vaccine and what happened with the side effects I have isn't going to be triggering to anybody. This is not a for or against the vaccines. This is just really what happened to me. And so I got the vaccine in April of 2021. And that following day, I had a nosebleed. The reason I'm mentioning this is because since that time, I've had unusual bleeding through my whole body, but specifically with my periods. So I got the vaccine, and then the next day I had a nosebleed that lasted for 3 hours. I've never had a nosebleed before in my life. I started a extremely heavy period where I wasn't due to have a period. So again, though, things had been, I'm just gonna go in with some bronzer. Things had been more unusual than they had prior to that with my periods, but still I got a period kind of out of the blue, and it was quite heavy, and I had quite a lot of bruising. Like you could, and I'm not prone to bruising, and you could actually see where my seatbelt went. I had an outline of my seatbelt on my body, and you know, multiple other bruises and stuff as well. So again, I did go to my doctor and let him know that, and at that point he said, okay, let's just, because I think at that time you could get the second dose within a couple of weeks, and he's like, let's maybe just, you know, pause for a minute and see, you know, sort of what happens, you know, see how your body, you know, clearly your body's just trying to figure this out, right? So let's just pause for that and see how you do for a little bit here. Not overly concerning, just of note, right? And so that was fine. And then in July of 2021, I got COVID. And again, when I was sick with COVID, I got a period when I wasn't due to have one. And it was one of the heaviest periods I have ever had in my life. Like incredibly heavy, you know, where it's almost, you know, again, I'm 47 years old. I've had lots of periods. They don't concern me. I've seen it, you know, the toilet full of blood and all that. Like that doesn't, you know, it of course doesn't concern me. But this was so heavy that I was like, oh, you know what, that's That seems considerable, you know? And so I think I did mention that to my doctor, because I do remember him calling me at home. And again, we're monitoring things, right? And then, so that was in the summer. And then sort of August, September, October, November, things were pretty normal for me. Normal periods, on time, and nothing out of the blue. When I was, you know, thinking, well, that's perfect. Actually, all of my menopause or perimenopause symptoms sort of felt like they had subsided or resolved. I didn't have much for hot flashes, and I was sleeping pretty good, and all of that. And then in mid-December, I got a period 2 weeks early, and it started pretty normal, and then very quickly got heavy. So like the first week, it was kind of normal bleeding. And then the second week, yes, I am still bleeding at this point, it was heavier. And heavy to the point where, you know, a tampon wasn't enough, and I'm having to put a tampon in and put a pad on, and I would still sometimes bleed through. I'm going to take this Tower 28 bronzer and use it as highlighter. I've been doing that and really loving how that looks. And so, you know, at this point though, now we're on Christmas holidays. So like my doctor's office is closed. And also I wasn't overly concerned at this point because yes, I had been bleeding a long time, but I had had girlfriends that had happened to, you know? And so starting January, I head back to work. And so at this point, I actually I gave notice at my job in November. And so I was just, you know, finishing out the last few weeks in January so they could train somebody and stuff like that. So I'm bleeding real heavy. Like by the time we head back to work, I want to say January 5th. At this point, I'm using a tampon. I've got a pad on, and I bought some of those period underwear, which I'll try to remember to link them down below. The ones I ordered initially were from, I think, a company called Noix, and then I switched. They were expensive. Like I bought one pair and I think they were like $30 or something. And then I found like a knockoff on Amazon, and so I ordered a 3-pack for I think $20. So I'll try to remember to link both of those down below because those have been a game changer for me. I wish my whole life I had known about period panties. And if you don't know, they're underwear that have a built-in absorbent piece to them. I mean, I'm sure they would work as well if you were a little incontinent and stuff, but they were great for my periods. And especially because I was bleeding through things. Okay, we got all our cream stuff on. Let's powder a little bit. I have a little mini of this Tatcha, the silk powder. I'm just trying to use it up. It's just a little mini. It's in my Shop My Stash, so I'm just trying to use it up. I don't love it. It's just not my favorite powder, but it's also not as horrible as I thought it was. So I'm back at work in January, and I'm bleeding very heavy. Like I'm, you know, kind of every hour on the hour, I'm changing my tampon. And I'm talking those big ones, those ones that are like the size of my wrist. You know, the industrial ones, the Super Plus, or what do they call them? They call them even something bigger than that. That's what I'm on right now at this time. Again, this is kind of the first week of January. And I'm starting to feel kind of tired, to be honest. Like I was starting to feel pretty run down and just like tired of it. You know, at this point I've been bleeding for 3 weeks. It's getting heavier every week, and there just seems to be no end in sight to it. Like it just doesn't feel like it's ever gonna slow down. I'm gonna go in with this Viseart bronzer here a little bit. And then the second week, so mid-January, again at this point I've been bleeding about a month, and I'm at work one afternoon and we all sit and have lunch. And I think earlier that week I had been complaining about how I had been having this period for like a month, right? But it's funny, it never occurred to me to go to the doctor. I had actually that just a few days prior been saying to my husband, I guess I probably should go to the doctor. Like this seems excessive. But you know, prior to that, I certainly hadn't. Let's go in with the Makeup by Mario highlighter, again in my Shop My Stash right now. And so we all sit and have lunch, and I'm not feeling great. Like I'm feeling a little off. And so I kind of pick at my lunch, but I'm feeling nauseous and I just don't feel good. And I stand up from lunch and I felt like this huge letdown. Like just like my whole body, everything that was holding everything together just said, I'm done. It let go. And now keep in mind, at this point, I've got a Super Plus tampon in, I've got a pad on, and I've got these period underwear on. And so I, do that weird run we all do to the washroom. And I get into the washroom and I've bled through everything. Like I've bled through like onto my legs. I'm wearing black scrubs. So I'm in the bathroom, I change my tampon out. Again, I put in another Super Plus one. I take off my dirty stuff. I didn't have another pair of the underwear there. And so I just had to kind of clean up as best I could. Now, I worked at a job where I would see patients, they would have appointments. And so I was lucky that the patient after lunch had canceled. I'm gonna go in with this Ofra palette. So pretty. I'm gonna take this top shade there for a little blush. And so I get all cleaned up and I walk to my office, which is maybe 20 steps from the bathroom to my office. By the time I get back to my office, I can feel that I have bled through that tampon. So I head back to the bathroom and I get in there and sure enough, I again have bled, like this is in less than 10 minutes. I bled through everything. It's down my legs. So I changed my tampon. And at this point, I'm starting to feel a little, this is a lot. This is maybe too much. At what point is it too much? Like, is there a point where it's concerning? And in my head, I'm thinking to myself, no, your period is stored blood. It's not fresh blood. And so I'm not panicking, but I change everything. I get myself all cleaned up. And I, again, walk back to my office. I think I sat in my office chair. I think at that point I Googled, can you bleed out from your period? And I couldn't find anything on that online, actually. What do we want to do next? Let's do our eyes next. And so I sat there for maybe a minute and I could feel that I had again bled through. So I go back to the bathroom and at this point I'm passing clots that are the size of the palm of my hand, where when I sit down to change everything, I can hear it and feel it move through me and splash. So alarming. I've never. And the pain, like I am in agony. I felt like I was in probably early stage labor. Let's take the Charlotte Tilbury Eyes to Mesmerize in Oyster Pearl. I'm gonna do the eye look that I've been doing lately because I've been absolutely loving it. So I take it on a flat shader brush and I kind of smush it out on the back of my hand to get an evenness to it. So anyways, I ended up bleeding through 4 Super Plus tampons in 40 minutes. And when I say bleed through, it wasn't just that I had to change 4 tampons in 40 minutes. I bled through and I was a mess. Like I was an absolute mess. I was covered. And then I just take a fluffy brush and I kind of blend out the edges. I was an absolute mess. I was completely covered. And after 40 minutes of this, where I just, first of all, I was, at this point now in the day, I've used up what I brought to work and I'm borrowing from other women. You know, and I'm feeling pretty frantic, to be honest. Like, I felt like it was crazy. I called my husband. My husband's like, well, I think you need to go to the hospital. And I'm like, nobody goes to the hospital because their period is heavy. Like, I'd never heard of such a thing. So I finally say to my boss, I think I have to go home. And I was lucky. There ended up only being one patient that afternoon, and it was one that he could do himself. So I work for an orthodontic office is where I was working. Anyways, so I go home from work. Now, I will just say this, in all my time working there, the only time I've been sick from work was when I had COVID and was forced to stay home. Like I don't call in sick. I don't go home sick. Never. like that. I just don't. And so that I had to go home was shocking for me. And then I'm going to take this little brush. So anyways, my son's girlfriend's a nurse. And so she says to me, so I called, I think they were on their way home. They had been visiting family. I'm just going to run this under my eyes here. I've been really liking how that looks as well. Oh, also I should mention, while this was happening, I had my Apple Watch off, and my Apple Watch is freaking out because my heart rate was spiking. Every time I would feel a big gush, my heart rate would spike. And so I was telling her that, and she's like, well, you probably need to go to Emerge. And again, I'm like, no, nobody goes to Emerge for a heavy period. I go home, I get myself cleaned up, I lay down, and it subsides. It goes back to kind of changing a tampon every hour. And it stayed like that until I went to my doctor's office on Monday morning. I'm gonna top this with this Makeup by Mario. You guys know, I just love this. And so I just take it kind of on the outside and work it up into the brow bone. Beautiful. So I go to my doctor on Monday, and he says to me, you should have gone to Emerge. Like, that's a bleeding event that requires immediate medical intervention. And so since that happened to me, I have been telling every woman I know, and I wanted to share this story on here as well because I didn't know that. And what do they call it? Hemorrhagia, I think is what they call the period that I had, where it was a medical emergency for me. I should have gone to Emerge, and I didn't. And if it happens again, knowing now what I know, I will. So I'm gonna just do a little bit of like inner corner stuff, and I'm gonna use the highlighter out of this Natasha Denona palette. So he immediately started me on 200 milligrams of progesterone, and I immediately felt better. Like within 24 hours, the bleeding had stopped, and I felt better. Not 100%, because at this point, to be honest, I am so anemic. He actually sent me for blood work. So when I went to that appointment on Monday, he said, "Okay, we need to immediately stop the bleeding. Like that's our number one priority." So he put me on the progesterone, which worked. He sent me for blood work, and he sent me for an ultrasound. So I had an external and an internal ultrasound. I think I'm gonna do my brows right now. So let's go in with this Patrick Ta. This is the shaping wax, and I'm just gonna activate it with a little bit of setting spray. So the blood work showed that I was incredibly anemic. Like pretty much all my iron levels were at 0. So my blood iron, my stored iron. Yeah, so he started me on Ferromax. We did talk about iron infusions, but you know, the problem in Canada is it can be a little hard to get into some of these things right now. It's funny, we do have access to free medical here. However, our wait times are considerable. So we did talk about an iron infusion and decided instead to put me on Ferromax just to sort of try to, if we could get his thought was if we could get the bleeding to stop, maybe the Ferromax would be enough. And it probably isn't. I probably still need to go for the iron infusion, I think is what they call it. But I haven't done that yet. So anyways, and then the ultrasound showed that I have a thickened endometrial lining with an area that is thicker than the rest. He's calling it an area of concern. So, I don't know, that doesn't sound good. And, or a mass, like there's a mass in there. So he sent a referral off to a gynecologist. Actually, he sent the referral to the Women's Center, which is at a hospital local to me. And he sent it as an urgent case, and they came back with a wait time of 9 to 18 months. And he said to me, like, there's no way you can wait that long. So he sent another referral out. There was a gynecologist who had treated one of my girlfriends, and my girlfriend loved her, and so he sent a referral to her office as well. Keep in mind, this is January, and as I'm filming this, it is April 21st, and I see the gynecologist on the 26th, April 26th. So about 3 months to get into the gynecologist, which is way better than any of them said. The least amount of wait time I was hearing was 6 months. So that I'm actually getting in next week is very exciting. So anyways, I was on the progesterone for 10 days, because that was as long as he wanted me on that higher dose of progesterone. And after 10 days, I went off, and the bleeding immediately started. Within 24 hours, I started just bleeding again, really heavy. And so he put me on 100 milligrams of progesterone, and that stopped the bleeding after a couple of days. I'm trying to think if there's anything I'm forgetting to this story. So at this point, I am just waiting for that gynecologist appointment. I'm gonna try this new mascara from LYS Beauty, and then I'll come back and we will put on, what should we put on for a lip? I know I do have some new lip stuff. Oh, I just don't like these little type of wands. I just feel like they're so tedious. Oh my goodness, I don't like this mascara at all. Oh, it took me forever. They just want to clump together. They don't look good. They're not long. You know, I didn't want to judge it but I knew I wasn't gonna like that. Look at my lashes are all clumped together. Ugh, maybe my mom will want this mascara. Oh, just terrible, terrible. So because my wait time with the gynecologist was so long, and to be honest, this, you know, this thickens, this area that's thicker or that is a mass is concerning to me. You know, my doctor said probably need a biopsy, but my doctor doesn't do that. And so my husband and I had talked about potentially going down to the US, because we're not far from Montana, and, you know, maybe seeing a gynecologist there and, you know, just getting it taken care of and paying out of pocket for that. But in the end, I do have this appointment with this gynecologist now next week. I'm very excited for it. I've heard she's amazing, and I, you know, wouldn't be surprised if she wants to do a biopsy of the area, and, you know, we'll kind of go from there. There was talk of, you know, like just with my family doctor, possibly an IUD, which I don't know how I feel about that, possibly a hysterectomy. You know, he just said be open to, you know, whatever needs to be done just needs to be done, right? So, and I am, like, I've had lots of girlfriends have a hysterectomy, so I kind of know what that's all involved in, you know, what's involved with that. I'm not, certainly I don't want one, but I'm also not, I mean, I'm a little afraid, but I have resigned myself that if that's what needs to happen, that's what needs to happen. And, you know, honestly, I just would like a little bit of energy back. Like, that has been what I have struggled with the most, is I have no energy. Like, I have zero energy. That last week I worked, I think the third week of January was my last week of work. And then it just happened by coincidence that I was then off work, and it's been such a blessing because I barely made it through that last week of work. I was so tired. The last couple of months, like when I walk up and down the stairs because of the anemia, my legs burn. Like, sometimes I don't even get to the top step. I have to pause on the landing and just take a breath. I'm short of breath all the time. I just have no energy, and my whole body feels exhausted all the time. So it's been hard. Like, that's been hard. I'm somebody who likes to constantly be kind of doing things, right? I'm kind of busy. And so to just have to sit and do nothing, well, actually what I do is I don't do that because I feel restless. So I pace. I pace around the house, getting nothing done, but also not really resting. So it's not good. Okay, let's go in with some setting spray. So I have a little mini of the Professional Super Setter actually, and the mister on this is beautiful. So let's spray. Yeah, so just tired. I'm really tired. And, you know, it has been a little bit stressful. I would like to just have everything kind of resolved at this point. I feel like that foundation is sitting kind of heavy. Like, I don't think it looks great, actually. I know it says luminous, but I feel like my skin looks really dry, actually. Again, I feel like my skin looks pretty heavy. Okay, for lips, I am gonna line with this e.l.f. one. I'm sorry, I don't think you can get this anymore, but I love it. I've noticed as I've aged, the border of my lips is not even like it once was. So I don't do it's not a hard line I'm trying to do. I'm trying to do something really soft and just smooth out that line. So I hope this story of mine is not scary. I'm certainly not trying to, you know, scare anyone, or, you know, I'm not trying to get sympathy or anything like that. Like, honestly, I am fine. And, you know, I feel pretty good most days. Low energy for sure. That's been the struggle. As I said in my other video, I'm very thankful for as much health as I have, right? Like, I know there's people that, of course, are way worse off than me. But this has just been my experience the last 4 or 5 months. And I thought it was valuable to share because there were lots, you know, there were things I just didn't know. Things that I think as women, it's kind of valuable to talk about. And I hope I didn't scare you because that's not my intentions. There we go. There is the finished makeup look. All ready for the day. Going nowhere. Doing nothing. But we got some makeup on. So like I said, I see the gynecologist in little under a week here. I am very excited, and I will keep you guys updated on what she says and, you know, what our plan is. It does always, like I have said before, it always makes me a little nervous to share health stuff on the internet. Again, this is not for sympathy, not at all. It's just to share my experience and what it was like, and, you know, maybe it helps somebody. Right? Maybe somebody else is going through this. Maybe you didn't know that you can bleed heavy enough with your period to need to go to the hospital. I certainly didn't know that. I had no idea, right, until this happened to me. So I feel like there's light at the end of the tunnel here because now I have this appointment with the gynecologist. I am in Canada, so if you didn't know that, I'm Canadian. And although I've said before, our healthcare is free, but there's a shortage probably across the board for most things. Our wait times can be long, and I think this shows that, right? As an urgent case, I've been waiting since January to see a gynecologist, which my doctor, every time I go in there, he's like, you can't wait. Like, this needs to be seen right away. But he's put in referrals, he's called them directly, and this is where we're at. And I do feel like, you know, now that my appointment date is here next week, I feel like I actually did get in not as far out as originally we thought, because that first time frame that I got back from the Women's Health Center was 9 to 18 months. Like, what? 9 to 18 months? Potentially 18 months of this? No. So I'll let you guys know what I end up doing through all of this perimenopause, menopause stuff. Like I said earlier, initially I thought, oh, I'll just breeze through my menopause experience. I'm just gonna do it all natural, and no, none of that is gonna happen. No, I'm just gonna do what the gynecologist recommends, because it's just been a lot, really. Like, it's nothing horrible, but it's just been a lot. So I hope that there was something in here that was helpful or informative, or, you know, just maybe made you feel like you weren't going through it alone. I'm sure there's more things to come as far as symptoms for me. I feel like this is just kind of getting started, and I guess we'll see what the outcome ends up being. But I really appreciate you taking the time to watch my video, as always. If you enjoyed it, if it was informative or helpful, I would appreciate a thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, if you would subscribe, that would be amazing. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye, everyone.